So now we're going to take a few moments to inform you about a piece of work that we are launching today. And to speak further about this, I'd like to hand over to Emma Granger, who is the manager of the Strategic Initiatives Unit in Lurgas. So over to you, Emma.
Hi there. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Oh, sorry, my slides just jumped ahead. Very nice to be with you all this morning and launching this report. As you can see, it's an evaluation report of eTwinning that we're launching today. Unfortunately, I can't claim to have been the researcher of this report or the author. That was Vanna Darcy, who is with the University of Limerick. She's the EU Partnerships Officer there. And previous to that has worked on European programmes both in Lurgas and outside of it too. So unfortunately she can't be with us today to discuss in detail the findings and recommendations. But we did want to draw attention to it today of its publication, and I believe John will or somebody will put a link in the chat so you'll have access to that too, as well as the previous piece. So really all I wanted to talk through today was just the rationale for the evaluation, sort of why we went about it, the process of it happening, and some of the key findings and the next steps that we're going to look at. So some of you, or many of you who are experiencing eTwinning, might be aware that eTwinning has been around since 2005. So this year is its sweet 16th birthday. So it's not exactly in its infancy, as Eileen was saying about the internet. If 30 is not in the infancy anymore, then or still in infancy, then so is 15. But we also, I suppose, feel because it's still growing, it hasn't reached its full potential, and there's still lots for us to learn about it happening. So at this point of it being a teenager in Ireland, at least, we thought it'd be a good time for some self-reflection. And I suppose over the years, we could take it that it's all very positive. We've seen a rise in terms of the metrics, the registrations on the site, the projects that are registered on the site each year. So even with an example like that, we know that from 2005 up to now, the number of projects that are registered each year has more than tripled. We've around 200 to 250 projects happening in the last couple of years each year. So the evaluation will, of course, it references that growth, but we wanted to look beyond that really to what's behind that, and to the service that we offer to the users of eTwinning, and maybe potential users down the line. So just a little bit more detail there. So I suppose also part of the rationale was that we know that there's much more capacity within the site for greater use of the platform within schools across Ireland. But we also know, I suppose, in the number of years that we've been working on it, informally even, that there are some hesitations, some obstacles, some things for people to get around. So we wanted to look at some of these considerations, how they've impacted on people using the platform, and how they might be gotten around for future users. So like I say, the evaluation itself goes right back to the birth of eTwinning, and it looks at various iterations over the years. It's the first in-depth look at national level. Obviously, it's been part of larger evaluations at European level. It's been subject to all kinds of factual checks and audit checks. But this is the first time we, as a National Support Office, have really examined the platform in an Irish context, and our efficacy, I suppose, as a support office for eTwinning. So the process itself, as you can see there, began in December 2019. And we thought we'd have it all nicely wrapped up in the last two terms of that academic year. But we all know what happened in March of that year. So we had a little bit of protraction in the report. But having said that, we still had around 150 responses to the two surveys, and around 50 people interviewed as part of it. So through a difficult year, we still had a lot of engagement from the eTwinning community. So we're really, really thankful for that. And it's led to a very rich report. Just move on to the... Sorry. Oh, they're coming in one by one. So the evaluation itself examines the levels of engagement with eTwinning. So like I said, beyond, I suppose, the number of registrations, but more so, what are people logging in for? What's the purpose behind it? How often are they actively engaged in it? It looks at the relevance of eTwinning, both to people who would have signed up, way back at the beginning, if they've dropped off, why, and more recent users, why they signed up. And if it's the relevance of that. It looks at the support offered by ourselves in the National Support Office, looking at the barriers to participation for some users, and the motivation factors for using eTwinning, and overall, I suppose, how any of these needs can be addressed. So the report itself, the aims and objectives were those ones that are listed there, and the key findings are broken down under each of those headings. So obviously I won't go into each and all of them now, but I suppose some particularly significant ones I can draw your attention to. And I just created, these are some of the key words in a little Wordle, which I know a lot of teachers will be familiar with. So on the key findings, I suppose, there were three major themes. One was the need for recognition of the work involved in eTwinning and the continuous professional development, the need for easier integration of eTwinning across an individual school, so a whole school approach, and finally the greater embedding of eTwinning across schools nationally. Which somewhat circles back to that first point, because we know that with greater recognition of the work, that might lead to more schools taking up the opportunities within eTwinning. So they were kind of the three overarching findings. There were some more practical findings and recommendations. So suggestions like templates for new users, examples of curriculum embedded projects, and the setting up of thematic clusters. And they're ones that we can start work on immediately. And kind of have been there in the background, but we're going to kind of draw up and draw more attention to for especially new users who are looking for those. And I suppose when looking at the obstacles as well, like two of the keywords that came up, which won't be a surprise to anyone who's involved in education or in school, one of them being time. And I suppose the other one being technology, which is just a fact of working on eTwinning. And with those findings, I suppose our attempts are going to be to try and mitigate one with the other to a certain extent. Obviously, we can't provide more time to a teacher in the day, or more time for schools to work on these projects. But what we can do is provide as much assistance as possible with the technology, and in that way attempt to ease some of the technological burden. So that shouldn't slow down any projects getting up and running. So with every project that's registered on the eTwinning site, there's the offer of an on-site, currently virtual visit with one of our eTwinning officers, just for teachers to go through any issues that they're facing or that they feel they might stumble on to get their project up and running. So in that way, to try and help with the time. And I suppose there are larger recommendations within the report that we need to look at in terms of future work plans. So we're really, really glad to have the feedback from users to be able to shape our future work plans around this guide. So the next steps, I think it says, the next steps that we've already begun are implementing those recommendations. Again, looking at our existing work plan and where we can make amendments to implement some of the recommendations, and for future work plans also. A piece that was coming up, or another kind of strong message that was coming through that teachers wanted to talk about, was the impact of these projects on themselves as teachers, their own professional development, their students, and the schools. And we felt like that was such a sort of recurring theme, but not exactly what we were setting out to look at in the evaluation, that we actually felt like it warrants its own separate study now. So that's going to be a separate piece of work that we're going to pull out to actually look at the impact taking part in eTwinning projects and being a member of the eTwinning community actually brings to schools and teachers. Yeah, so that's the next study. So all that's left for me to say really is to thank very, very much the participants who took part in what was an exceptionally difficult year in schools. We still had a great representation from our schools that are involved. To thank the researcher again, Ivana Darcy, and to launch this report, which will form a basis for the future plans. And we're delighted to be able to do that in consultation with the eTwinning community. So thank you very much.
Thank you to Emma Granger there for launching our eTwinning evaluation report. So the full report is available to read on our website. And as we've just heard from Emma, there's a lot of interesting findings in this. So it's well worth having a look. We'll post a link to the chat to where you can access this. So thank you again to Ivana Darcy for her work on conducting this research.